recruiting in law enforcement. Talk about a challenging adventure, to say the least. Now, with recruiting in law enforcement, I wanted to give one piece of advice, one helpful hint on something that I've seen is consistently neglected by law enforcement agencies nationwide. This is not only critical to your recruiting, but more importantly, your onboarding process. We talk about recruiting, we talk about retention. Unless we really dive in, we don't really openly discuss what goes on with onboarding and immediate training. Throw your FTO phases in there. That's part of your onboarding process. So your onboarding process, after you have a brand new officer or deputy, and this is where you build culture and performance and retention. The three things that will crush the productivity and the reputation of an agency, without a doubt. And I think that we can agree on. Now this next part, we'll see if we agree. So I'm excited to hear your input, what you're doing right now, what's worked, what isn't working. But here is the monstrous topic that is so prominent in law enforcement, but we completely avoid it during recruiting and onboarding. We're talking trauma. I know, it's not a super fun, positive conversation. But here's the thing. Law enforcement, as we know, is incredibly unpredictable. It's never the same 2 days in a row, and most law enforcement professionals, that's part of what they love about the job, right? Is it's never the same day twice. It's always what's coming next. Now, what is consistent and common and, dare I say, inevitable with the law enforcement profession is trauma. Some sort of mental trauma and something that either triggers, develops, leads to mental health challenges. We know it's out there, the numbers don't lie, and here is the argument. And I've had this conversation, so I'm excited to hear your input. Had this conversation with chiefs and sheriffs around the country, with command staffs. Okay, and the trick is, don't avoid or try to sugarcoat that the job is hard. It's fun, it's exciting, it's challenging, it's community-oriented, it's all these different things, right? All the reasons that you got into the job in the first place. But it is full of heartache and stress and trauma and anxiety and all the things that come along with it. So when we're recruiting, when we're going through an onboarding process, we have these issues later, and I've heard a lot of leaders talk about we have issues with these youngest guys, with Gen Z. The generation lacks resilience. The generation quits. You know, the generation can't handle what isn't even traumatic for us. Could be part of it. Or we are keeping it so close to the chest and they are blindsided by trauma. They're completely unprepared for it, and then something happens. And like all of us, you don't know how you react to trauma until you do, right? Sometimes it catches us off guard. Or we get these emotions when trauma happens, when an incident happens, we go, whoa, wasn't ready for that. I thought I'd be good here. This one stunk a little bit. This one is now challenging. This one is keeping me up at night. And we weren't ready. And that's with the trained law enforcement professional. With the new guy, who isn't even there yet, brand new, they don't know what really can happen, right? They don't have the experience yet. And then we wonder why some either don't cope well or they go running for the hills and our retention is struggling. So no more hiding that trauma is real in the profession. No more living by the stigma. No more toughen up. Yes, there's a job that has to be done, and you have to have mental toughness. You have to train and build resiliency. The job's not for everybody. 100% agree with you there. Okay, no problem there. But it is our job as trainers, as influencers, as mentors, as law enforcement professionals and leaders to prepare as best we can for the inevitable rough patch, for the inevitable tough call, for the inevitable crisis that shakes everybody just a little bit differently. So what can we do during recruiting, during onboarding, during those initial, that probationary year? Okay, hopefully they're getting some exposure and things like that. What can we do to best prepare our own officers for the inevitable, so that 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, they are at a complete loss? They don't know where they started down the wrong path. They don't know where they discovered darkness. They just know that life is rough now. So how do we get ahead? How do we become proactive? And how do we recruit the right people, select the right candidates, keep them productive, keep their morale high, and keep them, right, maintain and improve our retention rating? How do we do that without lying about the inevitable?